The sacral chakra represents vitality, self-gratification, and passion. The sacral relates to the reproduction and physical level, creativity, joy, relationships on an emotional level, and our energy and passions on a spiritual level. In balance, meaning passionate, creative, connected to others, strong sense of sensuality. Out of balance, loneliness, addicted, betrayal, low libido, regretful, anxious, guilty, low back pain, urinary problems, allergies. To balance, spend time near water, get out of your comfort zone, explore creative hobbies, hydrate, try yoga, socialize, connect with people. Basically, the bottom three chakras are kind of just meaning you're asleep. You're just a human being on this planet, not pursuing a spiritual path. You're just meeting your basic needs. And I kind of feel like the bottom three chakras are super easy to achieve. I think most people kind of achieve them naturally. I myself consider myself in the fourth chakra, which is the heart chakra, but I've been stuck there for since like 2021, 2022. What is that, 4 years now? And I'm probably not getting out. I think Ram Dass says too with the fourth chakra, the heart chakra, um, a lot of people get stuck there too, where it's like with your physical romantic needs, you're kind of stuck. You have a lot of love, but you're stuck with, that's always on your mind, even still. That's a problem for me too. It's like to ascend past that. And I feel like the bottom three, you kind of just naturally get there. And since I consider myself only in the fourth chakra, I don't know how to get to the other ones. It's kind of funny. It's like I know people in higher ones. I'm maybe will never make it. Um, I'm happy that I made it to the fourth, and I kind of feel like astrology has some interesting elements that connect to the chakra system. There's kind of like a moon element in astrology where I'm not much of an astrology guy, but there's kind of like you can have elements of the neighboring chakras. Like I feel like the one above me is the throat chakra, and I have like some tendencies of it, but I'm not it. But I have some tendencies, and like astrology is the same. You might have like a tendencies of the next astrological sign because you're right next to them, like because the birth month or whatever, that you're close to the next start of the next one, so you have like some overlapping tendencies. And I didn't know about the chakra system for a long time, and that's I think a guy on one of my comments was saying, "Don't you have any of your own thoughts?" And that's the thing. I kind of came to Hinduism by myself. I'm a Western guy. You know, my father is like a American, just kind of white Irish kind of guy. And my mom, she's Eastern, she's Mediterranean, she's Middle Eastern, she's Syrian, but she grew up in Canada. So she was kind of like first gen in Canada. So she's kind of a Canadian. She's lighter skinned. She's Byzantine Christian. So I grew up in a very Christian Catholic household. So I had no exposure to this sort of stuff. So I started coming to Hindu and Buddhist ideals myself prior to any study. I just naturally was questioning life, and that's kind of what that commenter had said, like, don't you have any of your own ideas? It's like actually that's what's so interesting, and that's why I'm doing the channel. I only present ideas that I came to myself. So even this stuff, it's I came to this sort of ideas myself without reading something. But it's nice that convergence to read something from a tradition and realize you came to that thought independently. So you agree with it. A lot of Hindu ideals, and even a lot of Christian ideals, especially the Gnostic, more mystical Christianity. There's a lot of, especially a lot of the parables I've come to realize are true. But I don't I have a hard time with Christianity since grew up Catholic, so it's kind of like, did I come to those ideas completely by myself, or was I led there with leading the witness sort of stuff? So I trust myself more on the Buddhist Hindu element because I don't have that exposure. Um, I think I talked about in another video. The only exposure I had to Hinduism as a child, I think I was like 10 or 12 years old. For some reason, my mom brought me to some event where it was Amar Archie, the like hugging saint. She's still alive. She's from India. She goes around the world hugging people. I hugged her. Like that was I went to that event and that was the most Hinduism I ever touched in my entire life. Um, and even for example, I was reading Ananda Mai's book, The Flower Sheds Its Fragrance, and there was a line in there that when she was asked about diet, she says, the diet should be simple. Even onions and garlic shouldn't be included because it kind of like activates kind of the nervous system. And I've been having those thoughts myself. I kind of noticed that like I have like, if I'm eating a burger or I want the grilled onions or like in a lot of dishes, especially in Mediterranean food, there's a lot of garlic. And I kind of noticed like the garlic doesn't do well with digestion, but I felt like this great desire for those spices. And I remember when I was in Las Vegas, there was a Hindu temple on Sundays that sold food without the onions and garlic, vegetarian food. And I was like, yeah, like I, I came to that idea without any prodding. It was just like my own, I've been assessing my diet over the last 3 or 4 years. It's like I kind of just realized it's kind of like there's an element of having some austerity in your life that you need less and less from the world, and like, oh, the food has to be super seasoned and this, it has to be all yum yum, where it's like at the end of the day it's just fuel and we make it into this thing. I remember one of my old bosses, me and a guy at work, he's like, you two just always talking about what you're gonna have for lunch. It's like you're looking forward to it so much. I said this in another video. I don't believe in anything. I believe in what works. Like I don't believe in woo woo. Like the practices and ideas, I need to come to them myself. And if I see it's in a tradition, I can take on that tradition. I don't believe in just to believe. You have to know it's true. It has to work for you. The same for me with like chanting. I do kind of Hindu style chanting. And I remember once in the car recently while I was having a really bad day. I was all angry and I had it going. And I think Maharaji said, like, you'll chant and sometimes God will actually appear, like even if it's not genuine. Like one day it will become genuine. So I kind of try, even if I'm not in the mood, turn it on. I can't help myself, but and then I almost like started laughing because it was like so ridiculous how mad I'm over some worldly thing. And it started kind of breaking me down, like the water creeping through the wall, like it finally broke through and I was back to myself. And that's the thing, you have to find a practice that works. I think Thich Nhat Hanh talks about that in one of his books about walking meditation. Let me go grab it. Yeah, the book is called Walking Meditation. It's Nguyen An Hung and Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a thin book, has a video along with it. And in the book, the main reason the book is so good is one line, really. It's a really short book. It's probably like 50 tiny pages. It said something like, do the practices th- that you miss. So, for example, he says something like, trial and error, try out a bunch of different things for practices if you like walking meditation or you like sitting meditation, and then see what you miss. And that's your practice. Like, what did you miss doing? Like, you don't want to force feed yourself a practice. That was my problem for many years. I was part of Pacific Zen Institute, and I'm not, I mean, on paper, technically, I guess I'm a Buddhist. That's where I pay my tithing dues to, but I'm not a true blue Buddhist. And like, even when I've gone to Hindu temples too for meditation, or even as a child, like prayer, I don't do well with that. Like, honestly, like for me, prayer, probably do more prayer in the shower or in my house randomly than in an official sitting down lotus position sort of thing. Like I'm not, never been kind of that prayerful type. Maybe it's the ADHD element. I need movement of some sort. But Tick Not On has that idea of like, do see what you miss. Cause like I used to, I sometimes I would go by the pool and just read a spiritual book in the middle of the day on my lunch break, working from home. And that became like a practice for a long time. Like I really, if I didn't do it, I really miss it. I wanted to spend 20, 30 minutes sitting in the sun, reading a spiritual book and just contemplating, like no cell phone, just bring some bottled water kind of thing and just sit at the pool at my complex when no one's there because everyone's at work. That was like a really great practice. I haven't done that in quite a while, but I do enjoy that. And that's the thing, the practices sometimes fall away. You stop doing certain practices. And there's other practices you do once or twice and you're like, oh, like you think you're gonna like it and then you actually don't. It's like what you actually do and then stick with that and then keep it a daily practice. I kind of feel like the bottom three um chakras you don't need a practice to achieve. They're kind of like I feel like it's almost like you'll achieve them just by aging in a way. It's like growing up. You'll get to the bottom three. And yeah, it's like I think Peter Thiel, that tech millionaire, have his book From Zero to One, and there's this idea like to get from nothing to something takes so much. And I think another guy had a book where it's like as a child, when the child's negotiating for a cookie, he's like, "Come on, I want the cookie," and the parents are like, "No," and then the kid's like, "Can I have a just a crumb of a cookie?" Right? 'Cause that crumb is still better than nothing. And I kind of feel like with spiritual practice, that's the greatest leap. It's kind of like there's images of a staircase and then there's certain images of a staircase where like the first step is like 30 feet in the air, and that's a normal staircase. But to get to that 30-foot start of the staircase, you're gonna have to like climb the sheer wall. I feel like spiritual practice, the first three chakras are you're like walking up to that staircase. And then to get to the heart chakra is this giant like war to climb up the wall. To get from three to four is like 0 to 1 in this situation. And so I kind of find these bottom ones, usually by the time I feel like they say the teacher, when you need a teacher, they'll appear. By the time you find the chakra system, you're probably at number three. You're probably, at the solar plexus at that point. You're like looking for more kind of thing. And I look back on my time because I didn't know about the chakra system when I started all this whole thing about like a spiritual practice. I was just like, I was in so much pain at the time. I was recently divorced. I was out of shape. And I was kind of like a David Goggins or hardcore at that time. I was getting in shape. I was, trying to like be disciplined in life. And then I was trying to just be a better person for my son and myself. And just kind of like this was a chance to like reinvent myself. COVID was happening. I was stuck in the house, lots of time to think. Then I got injured during COVID, had like two sprained ankles sort of thing. So I was injured and stuck in the house. It was like the best time to get into this stuff. I was listening to Ram Dass talk one time. I really love Ram Dass. Like he's taught me a lot. Um, but there was a one talk at the end that threw me off where he was like, some of these gurus, they always have some weakness. It seems common in a lot of faiths, whether it's Hinduism or Catholic Church, etc. There's always kind of this like sexual deviancy that I've noticed happens where like the high priests have to live such a pure life that then they want to have sex with kids or something, or they want to have romantic relations with kids. And Ram Dass at one of his talks at the very end, he kind of said something odd to me where it was like, oh, if you're attracted to like teenager kind of thing, like that's what you're attracted to. Don't be mad about it. Like it was really off-putting because up until that point, I've heard him say nothing wrong. And it was like this weird moment when he was like saying it's okay to be kind of like a pedo kind of thing, like a PDF file. And it was like, what? And then I was kind of just every spiritual leader has always done something like that, accept it, not on kind of thing. Like I think that's why I really love Tick Not On. I've not had any of those moments with from Tick Not On. Like usually all the spiritual leaders, there's something like this. And I remember I was talking with a friend. I'm like, maybe I could make it past Ram Dass. Like up until that point, I kind of felt like I'm never making it to the fourth chakra. I'm never making it to a guru level ever in this life. I've always kind of considered myself a bhakti, kind of like one step away and more of a disciple than like a guru. Like I kind of view myself as like Peter or something in the Bible where it's like I'm with Jesus all the time and like really enjoy it and like I'm all in, but I'm not, I'm like the doubting Thomas too, stepping on the water and falling through because I have some doubts and I kind of viewed myself as like never being pure enough or good enough to be past one of these people I've followed, especially because Thich Nhat Hanh is so good for me. Like everything, as I've gone more into Hinduism, I actually started understanding some of his more esoteric talks, where he's kind of that's the joke with um, Buddhism. It's just Hinduism repackaged for the West. It's more of like a clean, less esoteric version. Interesting too, I think once you get to the fourth chakra, if you're in the heart chakra, it's because of that Peter Thiel 0 to 1, that stair, you're actually on like the first step of the stair. You finally made it onto kind of a high level chakra system. And it's good and bad. You finally made it, but you also notice when other people are asleep. That's what the issue has been for me, where that's where the spiritual ego can take place. You start thinking you're better or you don't want to associate with other people kind of thing. And that's kind of like the Pharisees in the Bible and like, you know, kind of the false gurus and stuff. You see a lot of that where like someone knows just enough to get into trouble, especially in spiritual spaces. You see a lot of fake gurus where they have like $1,000 course and it's just a money making Ponzi scheme more than anything else. It's like Osho is one of those in a lot of ways. He's like the biggest name. I think there was a documentary on Netflix about it, like Wild Wild Country or something. Like Osho actually says a lot of very like enlightened things, but he's kind of like the almost like the Hitler of the spiritual guru Hindu kind of style world where it's like someone's using the power for the wrong reason. So it kind of like destroys the message in a lot of ways. So I have a hard time listening to his teachings that much just because of that. I mean, there's still value in it. Broken clocks right twice a day kind of stuff, but it's like it's tough to separate the messenger from the message sometimes. Been on the I've probably been in the heart chakra since like 2022 or 2023, like fully. And like I've been walking that staircase for a long time. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get to the next level. And it took a lot of work to make it to this level. I did so much study, so much self analysis, so many meditation sessions. There's so much to building a spiritual practice from scratch. And to get to the throat chakra for me, like especially because I talk too much, hence why I have the channel. I've gotten better, but to get to that point, it could be a lifetime. I could be 7 years old. And I have some friends I think that they're kind of at the top, like third eye, not the crown, but they're up there. They have kind of that spiritual, they can predict the future element kind of stuff. They've said things that have come true, sort of stuff like that. And kind of have that siddhi sort of spiritual power. I remember I first was getting into this when I realized there's like, oh, there's powers. Like I was kind of interested in that, but as I've gone on, I kind of don't care about that stuff. And maybe it feels a little woo-woo to me as well. But I've seen it. That's what's the crazy part. It's like the Christian miracles. Miracles happen oddly in life. It's like I think one of the guys I follow says something like synchronicities and miracles are like God's way of flirting with you. It's like the divine romance, Yogananda sort of thing. Or like the sacral chakra is more of like not being selfish chakra. But sadly, I think in our world, it's especially in America, we have a lot of selfish people. So I think even for people to make it to the next one, to the solar plexus. Actually, I've met a lot, thinking about it now, especially in corporate culture, I've met a lot of sacral chakras where they're almost past it, but they still have that like narcissism, selfishness. They're trying to get theirs. They're trying to screw people over. They don't really care about anyone else. They're kind of, whether in romantic relationships or personal or business, they kind of have this like they always are trying to angle shoot you. There's an angle. They're trying to make money off you. They're trying to get something from you. So I've noticed a lot of people. I used to joke where it's like people are 60 years old. I've been working with people that are 60 years old and they act like they're 14. It was always kind of shocking to me. So that's kind of a tell to me. They usually have addictions as well, just like I read in the beginning. I kind of find the people that are really stuck in the second chakra, they usually have like, they're either, if they're men, I kind of find they're like alcoholic-esque. They're into, um, intoxicants, whether tobacco, um, like these are like daily cigarette kind of smoker types, like daily THC sort of things. They have some level of addiction that's like excessive, like they're like a vapor that's like vaping nonstop. Like they have something where there's a level of kind of addiction that they're escaping. There's like escapism. A lot of guys do, I think it's like video game sort of thing. They use that as escape. I'd say that my brother kind of more like one of those. There's a lot of those men where it's like they use video games as kind of like to escape. And I used to be one of those too for many years when I was younger, more towards like my teens, maybe early 20s. And I kind of feel like people stay in the second chakra for a very long time because it's like I feel like to get to the third chakra with the solar plexus, it feels like more balanced. You're more confident in life. You kind of know what you want, sort of thing. So I feel like people naturally, probably by their 40, I think Carl Jung says like life begins at 40. Everything else before was research. So I kind of feel like people finally reach, even my ex-wife, I kind of when I met her again after she's been on a spiritual path, I felt like she's in that solar plexus one, maybe even heart chakra, but she was balanced for once. Like in years past, I kind of always felt with her when I was with her and even post divorce, she had this like anxiety about her. She was kind of in the sacral here where it was kind of like not necessarily addictions, but she was, drinking with the girls post divorce. Like there was kind of like the party girl was there, the kind of like immaturity was there in a lot of ways, or even just when life would happen, she could be mature, but also with her like family matters, she would kind of be like, it would always just cause all these big ruckuses. And so I kind of got to see that transformation from someone going from the second to the third. And so when I'm around her now, I don't feel so like drained as when we were married or even post divorce. There's not that like we're not so vibrationally different. We're next to each other versus before we were a couple apart. And I feel like that's a thing too, where it's like the vibration. I kind of naturally am more drawn to people in my chakra or above me, especially if they're in the next one, if they're in the throat chakra. Even like this week too, by chance she's Indian, we were kind of having we're having an issue at work, but both of us were very like calm about it. And I remember we got on a call and she was like, "Oh, can I give you some feedback?" And I'm like, "Sure." And she's like, "Oh, how you highlighted something, that's too bright, use a more muted color." I'm like, "Okay, we'll do." Like she felt comfortable enough with me to give me like random feedback like that. And, I kind of feel like when you're around somebody, you get more comfortable if you're on more same vibration. Um, And that's one thing was good with my job in a way. I've been exposed to a lot of different types of people, different faiths, different locations around the country or international. But it's interesting because it's like you can be in the guy in my comments was saying like, essentially we're all our own teachers. I think Krishnamurti and a lot of people talk about that. And I've agreed like and even my ex-wife said something like, spirituality ends up being kind of like graduate school where it's more like self-study. Like you might have a book and you have like an 8, 10 person class, but the teachers there more just to guide you. You're supposed to, it's kind of like PhD programs can be so much. You're kind of doing your own work in a way. Like you're past needing someone to prod you. I kind of feel like spiritual work once you're, especially once you're like past the second chakra and kind of on your way in the third chakra up to the fourth chakra, I think you're kind of like you don't need much prodding. And more importantly, you don't want it. You don't necessarily need organized religion at a certain point. You've kind of become the guru in a way. Like there's a point when you outgrow the that old saying, the student becomes the master. And I've seen that many times in my life when I've trained people on poker or, even in corporate, I've trained people that have become better than me. And I've been in that the student that became the master too, where it's like people have trained me and then I've eventually become better at than them at the job even. And that's the beauty and the curse of thing outgrowing the guru student stage. Because I know a lot of people that are always going from Zendo to Zendo or Hindu temple to Hindu temple kind of thing, or even churches like Christian churches, people like not like the priests. My parents are kind of like that. They like started going to a different church. Like people are always looking for that next guru. But the guru is really inside yourself, even on the spiritual path. It's like, someone sometimes you really do need it. You need the guidance, but there's a certain point when you've gotten enough guidance that you can do the research yourself. You can do, you know, the study or the meditations yourself. You don't need to go to a quote unquote mass or temple to get that experience. You can have that experience in your own home. I think Krishna Das talks about that too, where he says something like, you don't need to go to India anymore. It's all online now. Like you can go to the talks, you can have online meditations. And I agree. Like I'm actually really grateful I grew up in this kind of yuga, this era where I don't need to like go all the way to India to have like spiritual experiences and talk with gurus or, get chanting done. Like things are recorded. It's like so great. It's like kind of like a work from home spirituality nowadays. So I even before Krishna Das said that, I agreed. And like Krishna Das, I really love Krishna Das because he's the one that kind of started my chanting practice. I discovered him through Ram Dass, and like it's been life changing. And he had an event recently. I think it's coming up in North Carolina. I wanted to go, but again, problem was like thousands of dollars. It's like I really enjoy him, and obviously they're trying to stay. He has this is his full-time gig or whatever. But hard for me to spend that kind of money. But it would be nice to meet a guru in real life. I've never like physically met any of my gurus thinking about it now that it's always been like online, like even PZI, Pacific Zen Institute, they're based in Marin County. I used to live there, oddly, but I never went. I wasn't involved at the time when I lived there. I've only seen people on Zoom calls. Krishna Das, I've only seen him on podcasts on YouTube kind of thing. At least with PZI, I've actually had a real conversation with the guru via email, via like Zoom. So there's been like a back and forth. Krishna Dawson never had that back and forth. Um, and Thich Not On, I've never met him, but I've same thing. He died, I think, back in 21, 22. And I normally don't cry for someone I don't know, but I actually cried when he died because it was like he at that point he really brought me from zero to one. Like I can credit that Thich Not On for like getting me up that sheer wall. Like he got me to the heart chakra just barely. Like I climbed the sheer wall like a mountaineer with picks, axes, and I got to and I had to rest. Like he brought me so far, and like I would have loved to have like gone. I think he had a place in France while he was still alive. Would have loved. He's the kind of guy in those stories you hear, like people go to India to Maharaji Ram Dass, like 20 American disciples, Westerners kind of thing, go there. You just spend months in India kind of thing. I could have seen myself doing that with Thich Not On. If things had fallen into place, if I'd been younger, didn't have a child, this and that, I could have been just spending that time to get the lessons. It's kind of nice with the work from home spirituality. might have talked this about in another video, but how I even got into Hinduism at all was I was in my MBA program. Another Western, another white guy, just a white American, just like me, basically. And we were just talking books. Like, what's your favorite book? You know, I'm a voracious reader. So I always like asking people that because I usually go and read it when someone has a really good book. And he told me Be Here Now by Ram Dass. I'd never heard the name. I was in my MBA, must have been like 25 years old, 26 years old. Never heard anything about Hindus, never didn't know the first thing, right? And I forget what book I told him was my favorite at the time. And so I went and actually bought the book and I read it. And, that whole story about Be Here Now, where like, he's not present kind of thing really stuck with me. And then years later, I think in like 2020 or 2019, somewhere in that range, I watched Coming Home by Ram Dass on Netflix years later. So like he planted a seed for Ram Dass. And oddly, I went to this place like Abu Budi in Marin County, which was a Hindu temple. I didn't even realize it was a Hindu temple at the time. I knew it had some association, but I went to probably 10, 15 meditations. There was my wife at the time. So I guess I had some element of it, but I was kind of an atheist at that point. So I was more going just for the meditation. They didn't really talk too much actual Hindu theology. It was more just about like meditation, really. Um, so I kind of had this Hindu exposure that happened during that time period. And then, 5, 6 years later, I watched that Netflix special when I'm kind of separated from my wife. I showed it to my wife, I remember, because we're still on good terms during that time. And she's like, "What is this?" I was like, she didn't get it at all. I got it, but barely. I got it enough that I was like reinvigorated on the Hindu thing. But what really got me I probably watched that 20-minute special and it's still there. I think I've probably watched it probably 30 times, maybe more. And I think one of the times there's a part with the chanting Sita Ram, and it was just so beautiful to me. I just had to like find out more. And I started typing it in and looking at what it meant and this and that. And that's how I found Krishna Das. And then I bought his book, Chanting Chants of a Lifetime. And that was like a life-changing book. And the CD I still use today. Like, so it was kind of like this butterfly effect of these little moments that led me to kind of the Hindu system, right? It was like natural attraction. So one of my friends, she's kind of more of the third eye chakra type. She said like, have you ever visited India? And it was kind of like, even my whole life, I always gotten along with Indian people, and I've loved the food my whole life. Like maybe I'm reincarnated from someone in India or something like that. Kind of like I've always like, chai tea, tikka masala. Like I've loved the whole cuisine always. Um, and a lot of my Indian clients or whatever, we got along. Even before I was doing all this, we were getting along great. Before I was really on the spiritual path. Um, that's the thing with spirituality. I feel like you kind of go where you're naturally inclined to go. Even though I grew up in the Christian household, I've only ever been really attracted to the parables, like Aesop's fables sort of thing. It's kind of like I really have enjoyed the parables or the little like idioms, more like proverbs. But yeah, I think that's the thing with spirituality. Often it's a seed that gets planted from something and it doesn't grow, manifest. It grows in the dark, just like a seedling. When if you run a garden, you planted a garden, you know how that goes. You plant the seed and you water and like nothing is happening for weeks or even months, and then finally the sprout comes up. I feel like with spirituality, that's what happened with me. There was that friend in the MBA program planted that Hinduism seed in my head. And it took years to pop back up. But if I never met him, there's like pretty much no way I would have ever gotten to Ram Dass at all. Like I wouldn't have been exposed. Maybe someone else would have exposed me to him, but it came from a Westerner, oddly. And like, I don't know if he's a Hindu. We didn't ever have that discussion. He didn't seem like he was, but maybe people think the same with me. I definitely don't look like one. I don't act like one. I even joke I'm kind of like a fake Hindu. I'm a USA Hindu. I think Thich Nhat Hanh talks about Buddhism in that way that like a new variant grows wherever Buddhism goes. Like the American version's different than the Vietnamese version of Buddhism. Like there's kind of like it takes the flavor of the country. It's a little bit different. So I kind of view myself as like part of the Ram Dass Hindus, Krishna Das, and I'm one of those Hindus of like the Be Here Now network Hindus. I'm like one of those. It's like I'm an American Hindu, so I wouldn't necessarily, get probably SRF I'd get along with. I've gone to SRF a few times. Like they were similar to that. That's probably the most similar organized religion I could be part of, but it's interesting. You're kind of like we're a flavor of it. We're not the original, but we're still connected. We're kind of like a variant of like a crop where you have like a mutation. We're a different, we're a mutant version of it, different version. I think you can learn something from each different versions of the same kind of faith. Christianity has a lot of sects, as well. I think the thing too with whether part of the chakra system you're on, you have to live it. That's the hard part is like being yourself regardless of what's going on around you. I think Aristotle or Epictet or Epicurus says something where it's like, are you the same in gain and loss? Win or losing. That's like you kind of have to be like that on the path, whatever you're on spiritually. You have to integrate it. You have to be whole. You can't at work be screwing everyone over. And then when you come home, you go pray. Right. Yeah, you kind of have to integrate it fully. And I find that's really difficult. It took me many years. That was a big project for me of like acting how I normally am in the workplace, like kind of having that karmic element. Um, and I remember when I really wanted to quit and revenge quit at work, I had that thought of like, you know, I shouldn't be quitting to harm people, right? Because like, there's a lot of people that do the whole um they're gonna go on LOA when they're planning to quit, or they're gonna like slack off and like, especially my line of work, consulting, where you can screw over a lot of companies when you quit. If you just quit abruptly in the middle of a big project, you kind of like screw over not only your company, but these the client companies. And you don't want to ruin your reputation. People might fire you later, or you might get blacklisted unknowingly. And I feel like with the karmic thing, it's like my view on like jobs is that you have to quit in a way that doesn't harm everyone. Even if it means it might harm you a little bit, you want to just leave and you don't want to leave like a wake of destruction behind you. So I find like quitting often, especially, you want to time it for when it's good for everyone involved, including yourself if you can, where it's like the workload is low, like unusually low. You have enough staff. It's not going to hurt people. It's like a good time to leave. And oddly, it's funny right now. That's kind of happening. Like I'm at my lowest workload. I've been at this job 8 years. I'm probably at the lowest workload since I very first started right now. And it's kind of like if I'm gonna leave, I should leave in the near future. Or I'm stuck for another year or two or something, right? It's kind of like I have that karmic thing. Don't screw everyone over. I don't want the karma from that. And same thing, I don't want to take a job where I'm taking it knowing I'm going to quit and screw the business over. Kind of like I kind of want the low karma in the work world. You have to live. I think that's what they say about alignment is it's like living aligned with your values. It's like doing actions that are aligned with your values. That's where like the people get the dissonance where it's like you have values, but you're not living it. I've seen that with my own parents a lot of time. They have like all these Christian values and they're generally good people, but it's like the little things. Like my mom's a nurse. I think about it now. Oh, she always had like medical supplies at home, like just gauze or like rolls of like medical kind of clothy tape. But she shouldn't be taking that stuff home. Like that's still theft. Like I've never been like that at work. I don't take things home like that. Like I didn't think about it at the time. Like yeah, it's like it's like in you can play the game. Oh, I had a roll of tape in my pocket, kind of thing. But I saw what she was doing, and same with my dad. Like he cheated on her, and like he involved us. I still remember the story where it was like I had to have been really young, kind of been like 8 years old, maybe younger. And I remember after church, literally after a mass, we would go to this woman's house, and they had a daughter, and me and my brother and her would like play video games or something in the front room, and then he and her would like go off into the bedroom area, and like you're really young, you don't know anything about that kind of stuff, but it just made me what made me realize something was amiss was two things. One, it was like the way he was acting. It was like he seemed like he's normally kind of like a stoic, kind of like melancholic Irishman, where it's like he doesn't show a lot of emotion. But he looked all fruitily happy. It was like haha, like big fruity smile. Like that trigger. I'm like, like what's going on with those two? And she was kind of an attractive-ish woman. And not that my mom isn't attractive, but mom's a little out of shape, kind of shorter and stockier, and she kind of was kind of flirty. Even at that age, I can kind of tell, like, And then I don't rem he might have said not to say anything to mom about it, but maybe it was just like implied. I don't remember, but it was just odd to me because I was like, he never did anything. He was like a nerd boy, just stays at home, like afterward. Like he doesn't have any hobbies, doesn't have any friends. So it's like he didn't do things generally with people. So for us to like go to this place after. It just did, then years later I find out he cheated, right? But I didn't know at the time. But I remember that core memory. And it kind of ruined how I viewed him because it was like they're so Christian and good people, this and that, and they're always with the church, but like you're doing that. And I remember one time too, when I was first dating my wife in college, I brought her home to meet the parents, and he like touched the top of her butt during a hug, and my ex-wife told me about it at the time. Like like she must have reacted just bodily that he didn't do it again. But I told her like, yeah, if it happens again, let me, because I know him, like he's not stupid. So like I figured, I knew about the cheating too. So like, he doesn't get a college age woman in his house, and he's like 50 some years old with a wife. They're probably not doing much physically anymore. So I kind of figured like if it happens again, I'll confront him. But that's an awkward conversation. Like, please don't touch my wife. But and that's the thing too. It's kind of, and I saw that in myself in a lot of ways when I was first on the spiritual path. I think there was a thing where if you can't make peace with the people around you, how do you expect to make world peace? And like, I was kind of fighting with my ex-wife unnecessarily. Like, and that kind of that I wasn't living in alignment by fighting her all the time. Even though I was in the right with the child support, it was kind of like I was like kind of making making like kind of like the Israeli Palestine thing, where it's like it's kind of like the gang warfare too, where it's like someone gets off on one side and the other side off too, and then it just never ends. It's like you have to kind of try to stop the war. And, you know, I recently did that maybe last year. I finally kind of stopped the war, kind of make the peace treaty, and I feel a lot better now. I'm in alignment. I'm living not just in my work life, but all levels of my life. I kind of live in that kind of spiritual space that I'm trying to have my whole life be aligned. Everything, all my actions are aligned. Even at work too. It's kind of like I was really proud of myself where my direct boss was really terrible. She finally stepped down recently, but I remember I was asked like if she was a problem. I could have really crapped on her. And I didn't. I just kind of essentially said no comment. And her boss kind of just laughed because he knew in corporate, he knew what I meant, where it was like, I'm not happy with him. I'm not going to say anything. Because, it's kind of like the karmic thing. Like, even though I have a right to shit on her, it's kind of like the karmic thing. There's nothing to be accomplished, especially when I don't care about the worldly stuff anyway. And that's the thing too. For years, I wanted to move up this path. Like I wanted to be throat chakra. And now that I don't care about big, you know, moving up to the throat chakra, I'm moving up. It's kind of funny when you want it too much. I think there's an old Zen um koan that says something like, there's this guy and he comes to the Zendo to learn like sword fighting or something. And there's like a master sword fighter, and he's like how many years would it take if I train with you to become like a master swordsman? And there's like 10 years. It's like, but what if I like come every day and give up everything in my life? How long will it take? Like 20 years. Like, real what? And he's like, well, what if I like, just live here permanently for years, 30 years? And eventually he got it where he realized like you're trying too hard. And I think the teacher said something like, if you have one eye on the goal and one eye on what you're doing, you're not able to fully immerse yourself to train because you're too focused on the goal and not the present moment. And I think with spiritual path, it can get like that. You want to like go to the next guru, or you want to feel like you've made an advancement. And for me, it's like I think that's why I've been stuck at the fourth chakra for so long. You know, I've probably other people have moved faster up, but for once I realized I kind of had made it, I was like, okay, I want to go farther. And it was like that same thing. I was focused on the goal of moving up more than becoming the person. Now I'm kind of naturally gaining throat chakra. I'm kind of moving up a little bit because I'm, just naturally bringing myself into alignment. So it's kind of the Moses parting the Red Sea. Kind of naturally the path starts appearing. I think the Zen they talk about that. Like just start walking and the path will appear.